When you think of a newborn, you probably think of a squishy little thing that you just want to cuddle. And I feel the same way as a mom, but I'm also a pediatric occupational therapist. So when I think of a newborn, I actually also think about how much fun they are to play with and how important that play is for their development. Now, you might be scratching your head. How the heck do you play with a newborn? Well, friends, you're in the right spot, because in this video, I'm going to share my expert tips for playing with your newborn. I'm Rachel Coley from CanDoKiddo.com, and my channel is all about supporting you to more confidently and playfully parent. I do that through sharing expert tips from my career as an OT and also down-to-earth ideas from my life as a mama of 3. So how are we going to engage a newborn in play when he can't really hold any toys yet, he can't roll, he can't crawl, he can't sit up? I mean, let's be honest, he can't do much, and he can't even hold his head up. So it's important that we know that itty bitty babies play through movement and through interaction with the world around them through their senses. Simple: movement and interaction. So let's take a deep dive into that movement aspect of baby play. And we're gonna do it through the lens of a developmental expert. So movement in the early weeks is gonna look like your baby stretching and bending the arms and legs and turning the head side to side. It looks like random newborn wiggles, and that's what it is, but it's really important. During these random wiggles, your baby is gonna be stretching out of that flexed, curled up womb position. They're going to be strengthening their muscles, and they're gonna start to develop what's called a mental body map. They're gonna start to understand their body and parts of their body. As baby gets a little older, the movements will become more purposeful, and that's when we're gonna start to see and look for those big motor milestones that most parents are familiar with. So things like rolling and things like sitting up and crawling. But what most parents don't realize is that before those big milestones and between those big milestones are dozens of little subtle milestones, ones that I like to call mini milestones that most parents aren't familiar with. And the way that your baby is going to master those mini milestones so that they can get to the big milestone that you're all eager about and you're going to put on Facebook is through opportunities to move and practice. Some of the mini milestones that your newborn is working on are things like turning the head side to side and then learning to hold the head centered in the middle of the body, learning to purposefully extend and bend the arms, so moving from more reflexive movements into purposeful movements. They're going to be working on opening and closing the hands, not necessarily to grasp, but just to stretch out and strengthen those muscles and to begin to pair their eyes with their hands, starting to look at what their hand is doing. So it's a process through which your baby really graduates from these reflexive, primitive movements of infancy to more purposeful, coordinated movements. So what looks like just random newborn wiggles are actually really important steps towards those big milestones you're eager for and towards being able to hold and play with toys on their own. Now remember, the second part to newborn play was interacting with the world around them through their senses. Your baby's senses are really his or her window to the world. And so it's through engaging those senses and actively playing that baby starts to learn how to use them. They're new tools to baby, and there is a learning curve. So through practicing using them, your baby is going to get more skillful at sensory processing. A lot of newborn play involves looking and moving, listening and moving, feeling and moving, touching and moving, even smelling and moving. Now, we're not going to get into tasting because these are little babies who may not be ready for food yet. But those are some of the ways that your baby's going to engage all of their senses through play. So now that we understand the 2 biggest pieces of newborn play, we're starting to get an understanding of its important role in development. Now I want to share with you my 3 biggest tips for supporting your baby's milestones and development through play. One of the best ways that you can play with your newborn is to allow them plenty of freedom of movement, unrestricted by seats and swings and baby gear. Now, I'm not here to mom shame anyone. It's totally okay if you have some of that gear and even if you use it on a daily basis. But what I've found in my work as an OT is that most families don't realize how much cumulative time their baby is spending while awake with their movement restricted. So we're not talking about one piece of gear here. We're really looking in the average day, how much awake time is your baby active, free to fully move on the floor? Because those devices, car seat carriers, seats, swings, bouncy seats, mom Mamaroos, rock and plays, all of those. What they do is they limit your baby's movement. So in them, your baby isn't able to fully turn the head or to hold the head well at midline because they're semi-reclined against gravity. Gravity tends to pull them into one side or the other. They're not able to fully extend and stretch out their arms from the shoulders and their legs from the hips. And remember, those are some of the many milestones we just talked about. We talked about how important it was through play for your baby to stretch out of that curled up womb position. So we want to be really mindful and make sure that we are prioritizing unrestricted time for baby to really move and experience his body. If you're realizing right about now that maybe your baby isn't getting as much unrestricted movement, do not beat yourself up. I promise that will not help your baby's development. What will is starting to make some changes today. So here's some suggestions. Put blankets on the floor or play mats on the floor in different areas of your house where you spend the most time. So we used to have one outside of our master bathroom so that when I got ready in the morning, I could put baby down on the floor to play. If your home is not safe through siblings or big animals, what you can do is use a flat play yard like a pack and play and strategically put those around the house so that baby has some play space that's up off the floor but is still flat and unrestricted. And then my third tip is to take some of that baby gear and put it in a closet. It's still there when you really need it, but by putting it just a little bit further away, it's a little less convenient than those blankets that you've put all over your house, and you're more likely to default to unrestricted floor time play before you go clamoring through the closet to get that gear out. Another great way to support your baby's development at playtimes is to place your baby in a variety of body positions. Your baby has important developmental work working towards those mini milestones that we talked about in different positions, but until your baby can really crawl around or roll around on their own, he or she is dependent on you to put them in body positions. So most of the time nowadays, babies are spending the bulk of their time on their back, both for safe sleep and then also during playtime. Now, parents are told to do tummy time, but usually I've found that parents are only doing a few minutes of tummy time a day for most babies. So right now, most babies are spending the bulk of their time on their back, a few minutes a day on their belly, and that's pretty much it. Now, in addition to teaching parents about no cry tummy time and ways to increase that, and teaching parents to reduce time that baby is spent contained and movement restricted in devices, I also help parents to understand all the different body positions. It's not just two that we can put babies in. And I'm not going to charge you for an OT session. I'm going to give this information to you today. And so here are the positions that I want parents to think about in the order of priority. Side lying. Side lying is a great position that most parents don't know about. And so you want to make sure this is baby laying on the side, right? And you want to make sure you're doing it on both sides. And it can mean a variety of things. So side lying might be completely on your shoulder and hip. Most babies don't love that or will roll out of that. Side lying can also be propped at an angle or almost flat, but just barely propped. So there's lots of variations there. The next one is tummy time, like we talked about. Then we want to think about being held upright or being carried upright. There's lots of different ways to carry your baby upright to give them different experiences and different skills that they can be working on. And then we want to think about when baby's on the back to prioritize on the back with the head turned fully to the side, both ways. And then finally on the back looking up. To recap, those first two tips that I've offered before we dive into the third tip, which is all about your baby's senses, we want to offer baby as much freedom to move as we can, and we want baby to play in a variety of body positions. And finally, to play with your newborn, you're going to engage 6 of their senses. Now wait, didn't your kindergarten or first grade teacher teach you there were 5 senses? Looking, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling? Yes. Well, let's get rid of the tasting one like we talked about for right now. But then we're going to add 2 in that OTs are kind of obsessed with because they're really important for your baby's development. So those 6 senses are going to be hearing, seeing, smelling, touching, and then movement. 2 kinds of movement. The first movement is going to be movement that changes head position. And then the second type of movement is going to be movement that changes body position. Now that can be through your baby moving his own body, or it could be through you moving baby's body. The important thing to remember here is that babies learn through doing. Now I know it seems like newborns can't really do much, but through play and through their senses, they actually can do a lot. Baby can turn towards sounds that he hears. He can look at something with his eyes and visually study it or track it as it moves. Baby can touch and feel through his hands, through his cheek. Baby can put his hand in his mouth and sense what's going on inside that mouth. Baby can use his motor neurons to actually imitate faces that you make, which is a really fun way to play. Baby can stretch and strengthen and kick those legs while he's listening to you read a book. Baby can sense movement as you dance him around the kitchen. There's lots that you can do when you play with your baby. It just is a little more subtle than when baby's old enough to engage with toys. I want you to be aware of our tendency to allow our babies to spend the bulk of their awake time with their movement and sensation restricted. I want you to prioritize making the most of your baby's awake time by making it active, allowing baby full freedom to move in a variety of body positions and engage his senses. You are not alone if coming up with specific activities for your itty bitty squishy baby is tricky for you. That's why in my next video, I want to share 3 activities to try with your baby to make him love tummy time. Click the video on your screen right now and I'll see you in the next video.